Well, greetings, and happy Sunday, and welcome to Sunday Rants. I am your host, James Arnsberger, and it is Sunday, and we're going to get right into it. And I think what we'll do today or tonight is just give you a little bit of an update and on the front of what we're doing for our outreach campaign, which we're getting ready to launch the first part of that. And then I thought we would spend a little bit of time focusing in a little bit more on a different aspect of the entire epidemic problem of wrongful conviction. And then give you a little bit of an update on what we're doing specifically in the case of Jermaine Smothers and his predicament and incarceration in what we can start doing to start building basically some public awareness and outreach. I think a lot of the challenge that we're looking at in how do you really tackle this problem of wrongful conviction is really just a basic information and awareness education in general. I had a chance this week, and I'll give you some more information about a little bit more about this before we conclude tonight's Sunday Rants. But I did have a chance to talk with Jermaine Smothers' wife, Kayla. We had a great call earlier in the week. It was very, actually very moving to really understand the dilemma and the frustration that it must. I don't think anybody, people can say, oh, I can only imagine. I could never imagine what it would be like. I just couldn't. It's just such a tragedy for anybody to be in that situation, and how it affects just so much of the lives of not only the individual, in this case Jermaine, but those that love and care for him, that are close to him, and you just can't imagine what that would be like. It's impossible to imagine it unless you're going through it. What we can do is pray. What we can do is have faith. Without faith, you don't get hope. And what we can do is start really working toward educating the public about the topic and circumstances surrounding wrongful conviction. I don't think there's any question in our community, in our county, in our state, or in this country, or in the world for that matter, since we have the worst statistics in terms of incarcerating people and warehousing them in prison. The United States certainly has a tarnished record at best. I think part of the issue when it comes to wrongful conviction are the preformed biases that we have built up in our mind. And it starts with the actual crime, the arrest, and then all of the things before the trial. And I think a lot of people in the public at large, and I'm not faulting anybody, I'm just kind of trying to explain how I think some of this works, is that, there's a crime that took place, somebody gets arrested, and then I think most of the thought process, by and large, goes to the conclusion or the presumption that, well, the cops must have had something, or they would not have arrested him or her. And I think that's where we start falling off the cliff. The level of civics education in this country, to the extent that we even have any, is just breathtaking. How little education the average person has about our political system and structure, our criminal justice system. And I'm leading to the point of this notion that is anchored in our Bill of Rights and anchored in our Constitution is the presumption of innocence. Every person accused of a crime is presumed innocent until, by a reasonable doubt, they are found guilty of committing that crime. And that's another part of where this goes off the rails, because the trial, the pretrial, the investigation, all of the components that make up the jury selection or the exclusion from jury duty, and the race bias that is built into that formula and outcome, all of these things start stacking up against the accused, right? And it starts with the media, it starts with the news reporting, it starts with the community, and then social media kicks in, and we have all but forgotten or don't even know or realize that every accused person is presumed to be innocent. It is the government that has the duty and the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that is the person who in fact committed the crime. And there is a whole process between the actual event of the crime and the conviction where our system is broken. It's an abject failure to have this many people, the thousands of people who have already been exonerated as being wrongfully convicted, and the thousands, if not tens of thousands more, that are serving time for a crime that they did not commit. So I'm going to encourage you, if you're watching this now live or down the road later in time from today, which is July 18th, Sunday, and stop and contemplate for a moment how many times we may have jumped to a conclusion falsely that because the cops arrested so-and-so for a crime, well, they must have done something, because otherwise the cops would not have arrested them. That is so far from the reality and so displaced from the way our system is set up and supposed to work. It doesn't work that way, but it's supposed to work that way. And the jury is sort of the last front of protection for an accused, and the government has all of the burden. The defendant has no burden to prove that they're innocent or that they're not guilty. The government has the burden beyond a reasonable doubt to prove to a jury that this person is in fact the person who broke the law and committed the crime. And so the next time that you're tempted to jump to that conclusion that the person would not have been arrested unless the cops had something on them, you've got to find a way to get that out of your head, because that's where this starts breaking down, not only from the arrest, but just in how it's all handled before the trial, during the trial, and after the conviction. And then we have somebody spending decades in prison like Jermaine, who didn't commit the crime. So wrongful conviction starts with the actual event of the crime, and then all of the succeeding events thereafter that formulate this wave, this just unbelievable wave and mountain of obstacles that an accused has to overcome when, in fact, the way it's supposed to work is that burden and that wave of things to overcome needs to be shifted to the government, and they should be required to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to have a reasonable articulable suspicion, probable cause to get a warrant, probable cause to make an arrest. And that's another area where all of this starts just breaking down. Part of the problem, and there are so many parts to this problem, it's just unbelievable, are the techniques that are used by investigators um, to coerce witness statements one way or another. And I'm not making stuff up. You can go read the hundreds and thousands of cases that I've been reading where this has come out many years after when somebody is finally exonerated and released from prison for a crime they didn't commit. And you start going back and sort of do an autopsy on all of the facts and the case and the investigation. And you can see several places where the system broke down. The checks and balances, there are no checks and balances. And it's like I talked about a couple of weeks ago on another Sunday Rants, given the choice between closing the case and solving the crime, a good number of these end up being close the case and to hell with solving the crime. We have a dead body, we have a gun, we have a young black youth, case closed, right? And but beyond the fact that that's just bullshit, the problem that we have is that this permeates throughout our society, throughout our community, and we watch the news, we hear the news, we read something on social media. Oh, cops arrested Joe Blow and Tammy Tani, and the cops wouldn't have arrested them unless they did something. No, that's not how it works. The cops may have been justified with their reasonable suspicion and probable cause to make an arrest, but then there's a whole burden that the state and the police working together have to overcome, this high hurdle of reasonable doubt. And reasonable doubt is, there's a legal definition for it in a trial. There's certainly enough doubt in Jermaine's case that's beyond reasonable that he did not commit this crime. And that's just one of tens of thousands of cases and examples. And so when we get into the discussion and we get into the problem, the tragedy, the epidemic, the abject failure of a system that is supposed to protect the innocent, we do everything but protect the innocent, starting with our own opinions, our own biases, our own prejudices, our own misconceived and misplaced notions and ideas that are formulated from a whole host of different contributing factors. So I'm just going to suggest that wrongful convictions are everybody's business. Every community is affected by it. Everybody in the community is affected by it, whether you know Jermaine or not. I hope I have the honor and the pleasure soon to be able to meet him. Certainly going to be writing to him. But I've got to tell you that when you put this in some sort of balance perspective, the scales are lopsided. They're just so stacked against an accused, and that job is already tough enough to defend yourself against an allegation of committing a crime. The state has, for the most part, unlimited resources that a defendant doesn't have, and get tied down with a public defender. And with all due respect to the public defender's office, God bless them for the work that they do, but they've got a caseload that's a mile high, right? And so you're not going to get the kind of commitment, maybe. You're not going to get the kind of talent, maybe. You're not going to get the kind of passion, maybe. And you're not going to get the kind of rigorous, aggressive defense to protect the rights of the accused. And those are all just another stone in the path toward the wrongful conviction. So I want you to try to just put some perspective and think through this process, and not trying to point blame or anything, but just ask yourself, how many times have you jumped to a conclusion when you heard about somebody getting arrested for a crime, that, well, the cops must have something on them or they wouldn't have arrested them. I would suggest that if that even remotely enters your mind, then we've got to step back and look at this more from an objective standpoint, not a subjective standpoint, and start questioning and start going and following facts and where those facts lead. Facts are stubborn little things because they don't change. A fact is a fact. Everything else that's not a fact is generally speculation, bias, some predisposition toward a belief, and how we form our beliefs is another nightmare that I won't even get into tonight, except to say that all of these many, many, many things are just another stack in the pile of obstacles that an accused has to overcome, and they shouldn't. That's not the way our system is supposed to work, but it's certainly broken, and it's certainly an abject failure if we even allow one person to be wrongfully convicted. And we've got thousands and thousands of people that have been exonerated, and tens of thousands nationwide that are trying to get exonerated for crimes that they didn't commit. Jermaine Smothers is one, but many in this war on crime where innocent people are losing and the community loses. We all suffer this loss. And I'm just going to implore you to consider, it's hard to imagine, so we can't possibly say that I can only imagine, because I can't imagine what it would be like. But I can have a lot of empathy and try to have some understanding that it must feel many times every day that it is just an impossible burden, and without faith and without hope and a lot of prayer and a lot of love, I don't know how somebody can endure that kind of suffering, to spend decades in prison, let alone even hours in prison for a crime that they didn't commit. So when you're thinking about wrongful conviction, you have to look at it as a three-dimensional, multi-dynamic set of circumstances, all of which are stacked against an accused who is presumed on the face of the accusation to be innocent. And the government has 1,000% of the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they're guilty, not that they're innocent. They've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they're the person that committed the crime. And in Jermaine's case, that was a miserable failure. The jury, in terms of their deliberation, I've had lunch meetings that were longer than the deliberation that the jury took in Jermaine's case. And some of the anecdotal stuff that I've been reading about that is just breathtaking. It's frightening to think that people were more interested in their vacations and their getting back to their work and blah, 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 just nonsense. It's just total nonsense. Yet we have a human being who's been deprived of their liberty and their freedom, sitting in prison for a crime they didn't commit. So that's where we start. In terms of our campaign efforts, we're coming up soon to the month of August. That is when our first wave of initiative and effort for Jermaine will begin to unfold. As we get closer to August 1st, I'll have more information and updates on the calfeja.org site. You can go right there on the thing that's scrolling at the bottom. And we'll have some more information and updates on the Facebook page for Sunday Rants and on our Sunday Rants show including next week, I will be able to put up there how to write to Jermaine. We want to get a letter writing campaign started. That's going to be one of the things that we're going to kick off the first part of August. And then we're going to be kicking into high gear our public outreach and public awareness campaign, the Free the Innocent, with Jermaine being mainly our focus of attention on freeing the innocent. And let's start with Jermaine. The whole campaign, we're working with a lot of different organizations and different people and different groups and individuals to formulate a highly effective campaign. We understand that this is going to take a lot of resource, a lot of energy, a lot of time, and a lot of effort. I'm in it to win it for Jermaine and do whatever it takes. Not my best. I'm going to do whatever it takes on my part, whatever small role that might be, to get the public awareness of Jermaine and his story out to our community here in San Diego County, and more specifically Oceanside and some of the other areas that we believe that we will have some fruit that will come from those efforts in bringing about more awareness to Jermaine and his story. Jermaine is one of thousands, tens of thousands of examples that I talk about all the time. And so I think it's a great place for us to start in terms of that effort. Lastly, before we wrap up, what I would like to say is when we talk about things that we can do to help, yeah, I'm not talking strictly in the sense of making financial donations. While financial donations are important, we're still not taking any financial donations other than the in-kind donations that we've taken for paying and underwriting some of the efforts that we're doing here. Because until we have our little IRS nonprofit letter, which should be any day now, we can go ahead and accept those donations without that in hand. But I'm a little bit more cautious. I'd rather wait till we actually had it in hand, and then we can put it up on the website so everybody can see that we actually have our IRS approval, and then our California State Attorney General, all of that stuff, and that paperwork has to be make sure that we have all that in order. We're going to play by the rules, just like any other organization needs to play by the rules. None of the executives, starting with me, or none of the other people working on behalf of CalFeja is being paid even $1, not one penny. 100% of anything that we're going to be collecting in the way of donations will go to the campaign efforts for the education, the public outreach, and the awareness, particularly what we're going to be doing in Jermaine Smothers' case, and getting more people involved and more people to know and learn about Jermaine and his story. So with that said, just keep in mind, every person accused of a crime is afforded the presumption of innocence, carte blanche, and the government has a high burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that's the person that committed the crime. And in Jermaine's case, they got it wrong, tenfold they got it wrong. So now what we've got to do is do our part in outreach, education, and awareness, and let organizations like the California Innocence Project do their job in trying to find some way to gain the release and the exoneration of Jermaine and get him out of prison. I would encourage you to keep Kayla and Jermaine and their family in your prayers, the attorneys that are working at CIP, and pray for them. And we've got to keep faith. Without that, we have no hope. And so that's something that I want to encourage everybody. There's always something that we can do to help somebody that has been wrongfully convicted. And so let's figure that out. Anything that you can do, send me an email right there at that email address, info@calfeja, and I'd be happy to respond to that. And other than that, I'm going to encourage everybody, have a great day. The rest of your Sunday, have a great week in the week ahead. I look forward to next week. We'll have some more updates. And by the time we get to August 1st, we'll have our first step forward in trying to work hard to gain the release and exoneration of Jermaine Smothers. With that, I'm going to bid everybody a great Sunday evening. I'll see you next week. I'm your host, James Harnsberger, for Sunday Rants. And have a great night and peace out.